Yes, there we go. Oi, and he's off. Woohoo! And that's not a loose clutch. He is angry. Today you are joining me on the banks of shearwater fishery, where I've actually been all day fishing on the deck. Now, as you've seen from the title of the video and the thumbnail, I'm going to be surface fishing from now on. It's into the evening and I've filled my boots with carp off the bottom. I've had double takes and even a triple take at one point, so I'm down to 2 rods. They are currently still out, but they'll be coming in very shortly because although I've caught loads of fish and thoroughly enjoyed myself today, surface fishing has got to be my favourite method of catching fish, and it is for a lot of you as well. Now, having a dedicated setup for your floater fishing, I don't think it's been that common. I mean, I have my own setup for surface fishing. I'm in a privileged position where I get to have my hands on these sort of things. But if you haven't done so yet, I really do recommend it. Although I haven't used this yet today, I may eat my words later on, I highly doubt it. But having a dedicated setup for surface fishing has transformed how much I enjoy surface fishing, from already really enjoying it to absolutely loving it. And that's because it's set up and designed exactly with surface fishing in mind. The casting weights, the style of fishing, you're often using thinner hook links, so you want to have something that's a bit more forgiving on the tip but can still get the floats out there. But having that forgiving tip means that when it gets closer to the net and the fish is thrashing around, you're less likely to bump a fish off because it can absorb those lunges. And that's where these dedicated rods come in. So Nash have now brought out this, the Flota Rota, and I know they're synonymous with shorter rods, the 6 foots, 9 foots and whatever. But when it comes to surface fishing, you kind of want a longer rod that can absorb those lunges and cast the floats nice and easily. And that's why they brought this out. So this is a 12-foot, 2.5 pound test curve. Now, it may sound fairly soft, but for those of you that have been fishing for decades, you'll probably think that's all we used to use back in the day. So these do catch fish. You don't have to go for 3 pound, 3.25, 3.5 or 13 footers to catch carp. Something like this, especially on a water like I'm on today, is absolutely fine. Of course, if you're going to be fishing on the surface at mega range, then this sort of thing may be overgunned or undergunned, sorry, and you may have to step up. For the most part, when you're surface fishing, it's generally closer quarter fishing, and this will be absolutely perfect for that. That's not to say it's not got any backbone. It's a 1K weave throughout, so it's plenty beefy enough to catch the fish and cast out there. And that's finished off with C guides. These are nice and lightweight, so that aids with the casting capabilities and just how lightweight the rod is. I mean, I've got a little scope GT reel on there. I'm not sure of the exact size, but this balanced setup weighs next to nothing. And when you're surface fishing, you can often do it for hours on end without even sitting down. So having something that doesn't weigh you down and is a joy to use will definitely make you fish more efficiently and enjoy it a lot more. You've then got a Fuji reel seat, nice and simplistic, and then an old school cork handle, and that's where you see the Flota Rota etched into the cork. It's a really nice finish, little flare at the very end and a flare at the top as well. Just a really nice looking rod all round. Little Nash logo just above the reel seat. And another little point to pick up on this, or a little feature which I think is really nice, is the 3 points you can hook your rig. So at the moment I'm just using the one that's just above the reel seat, but there's also a little loop at the bottom and a little loop just up from the spigot. So this is for if you've got varying different hook lengths. You want to have your float up there and then latch it on here if it's a shorter rig, or a longer rig, or a super long rig. You can latch it on here, move swim without having to thread your hook link through an eye, back up and latch it on, causing kinks, potentially damaging your hook link. It keeps it all nice and flush like so. To finish things off, I've got the GT reel, as I said, with 15 pound zig flow. That's going all the way up to one of their medium bolt machines. And then I've got a fairly long, it's my arm span or my wingspan, so, or just short of. So I think it's probably about a 4.5, 5 foot hook link there, and that's slightly weaker. That's 9 pound zig flow instead. So it's just a bit more discreet, and it just, well, if the fish are being finicky, then it shouldn't be as much of an issue as if I was using 15 straight through. And it's perfect for this venue. Hook wise, I'm using a size 8 floater claw. And then I've got a little kicker. And this is one of their 𝘁𝗶𝗍𝗀liners from the 𝘁𝗶𝗍𝗀 kit. You can also get ones that match the hook bait, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's really simple. It's a kicker that slides over your hook, gives you that lovely line angle exit. And then it also gives you the screw, so you can screw on any bait. So I'm using their artificial dog biscuits or mixers, whatever you want to call them. And they just screw on perfectly. And they are perfectly buoyant with a size 8 hook. They've been designed to match up with about a size 8 hook. So I'm excited to see how they go. And then moving on to the actual bait I'm going to be putting out, I've just got a bucket full of slicker floater, which I've also chucked a bit more oil on top of, just to boost them even more, because it is pretty choppy today, as you can probably see from the wind behind me. So I want to try and slacken that off as much as possible. As I said, I've had plenty on the deck so far today. I'm going to bring them in, start putting out some mixers with the spod, and hopefully start bringing some fish to the surface coming into the evening. Now, while I wait for this first bite, I can reiterate how light this is. As you can see, there's nowhere for me to put this rod down, although the cork will probably make the rod float. I don't really want to put it down in this murky water that I'm stirring up. So the fact that this is lightweight, it's really not tiring me out. It's casting lovely, and hopefully I get to test the playing action in a second. But for the bit in between casting and playing, it really doesn't weigh anything. Come on. There's enough of you about. Ooh, that must have been close. Go on. Yes, there we go. Oi, and he's off. Woohoo! And that's not a loose clutch. He is angry. I've got to be fairly careful because there's a bay around there. Oh. Well, that was harder work than I thought. It's been a bit, well, I say 20 minutes, I suppose. Oh, he's off again. Wow. Have you finally stopped? Hopefully you can see just how lovely that curve is. Really progressive, and yet I still feel like I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on this fish, so it's not like it's too soft. There's plenty down low to be able to put a bit of pressure on this fish. But as you can see, he's still trying to take line. Even he's probably 80 yards now. But lovely. I've been able to cast well beyond where I'm putting the mixers out and then pulling the rod back slowly into the mix. I'd say probably I made half a dozen to 10 casts until I finally made one slip up. But lovely. Whew. Although I've lost count of how many fish I've had today, this one feels the best out of them all so far. I absolutely love surface fishing. And he's not done. Now, one thing I'd say with fishing the range I'm at, if I wanted to go a bit further, I could step up to a slightly larger controller. But I think the one I'm using, the MIDI, is probably the, I think it's called the MIDI, the medium weight one. It's not the smallest, it's not the big chunky one. I've got one in my bag. It's the perfect balance for this rod, I found. And I think if I wanted to go a little bit further than this, I think it's probably the reel that would be the thing that's holding me back fishing any further. It is a very small reel and it's perfect for this sort of distance. But say those fish pushed out an extra 20 yards or so, I don't think putting on a bigger float would help. I think it would be a slightly bigger reel. But that's not the case right now. They are feeding exactly within comfort range, a good 60 yards or so. And this one is putting up a good account of itself. And that's the thing, I often use surface fishing as a tactic on venues with smaller fish, and I don't really want to go overgunned with a big chunky rod because I want to enjoy my fishing. And this is exactly what a dedicated rod like this allows you to do. Great fun. And there we are. One of the typical cricket back commons you get in here, full of beans. And this one feels like steroids. We're off the mark. And he's in. Sweet. Well, here's the result of that absolutely blistering initial take. I saw the float move and thought, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in. As soon as I struck in, good job I had the clutch set perfectly, because this one went on, what, 20, 30 yard run? Insane. And it made me start to question whether this was foul hooked in the tail or something, because it went on a few subsequent runs. But sure enough, it's hooked in the mouth, about 2 inches back actually, absolutely engulfed it. And very welcome start to the evening's fishing on the surface. May not be the first of the day, but first off the top, and makes me very happy. I put one spot of mixers back out before I lifted this fish, and all I can hear in my right ear is what sounds like a dodgy alleyway on a Friday night in town. Lots of slurping. That's probably the weirdest analogy you've ever heard on a carp fishing video as well. Go on. Go on. There'll be barely any left. Yes! Woohoo! Well, that was quite the eruption on the surface. I've been battling against the birds. I've had swans, seagulls, ducks, even the odd moorhen and coot. Oh, as soon as I put some bait out, the carp would come up. As soon as there was that commotion and the birds realised what was going on, they were on it, and it pushed the carp away. Normally it's the other way around. The birds don't really like the carp. There were so many birds that the carp stopped feeding. So I fed another little patch, which the birds came over to. Quickly put another pole over the top, another spot over the top of where I was initially feeding, and it gave me a small enough window, or big enough window, shall I say, to get a rig in position, and it was inevitable to get a bite then. There was probably half a dozen or more fish, all within the space of, I don't know, 6 foot circle, slurping away, and it was only a matter of time till this one went off. Great fun. Very rewarding, but it can also be an extremely frustrating tactic when the bird life is against you. Go on. And he's in. Oh, hard fought for. And complete polar opposite to that common to start with, because this is a nice scattered scale little mirror. And there we go, fish number 2, completely different to that first common, obviously because it's a mirror, but lovely scales along its back mainly, a few dotted around here and there, really welcome. And that one exploded off the top, as you saw. So I absolutely love surface fishing. I keep on saying it all the way through. I don't think I'll ever get bored of it. One final little look at him before slipping back. Happy days. Another beautiful fish fall into surface tactics, made all the more enjoyable using dedicated setup. So for more information, please head over to the Nash website, have a look at the Flota Rota yourself, and maybe pick one up. You won't regret it. Got him! Oh, I've got a lovely wet sock right at the end of the day. That's not funny.